When grief doesn't look like grief, the unspoken truth about complex loss. Have you ever felt like you were supposed to cry, but the tears just wouldn't come? Like the world handed you a script for your emotions, but your heart simply wouldn't follow along? I recently had the extraordinary privilege of interviewing Brandie Nichols, a revolutionary entrepreneur whose unflinching honesty about family relationships has transformed how thousands of people conceptualize loss. What struck me most wasn't just her remarkable business acumen or her strategic brilliance, though both are undeniable. It was her raw courage to speak an uncomfortable truth that society desperately tries to silence. Sometimes when a parent dies, we don't feel what we're supposed to feel. And that's okay. Actually, it's more than okay. It's authentic. It's real. It's human. Society hands us this well worn script for grief. We're expected to collapse in sorrow, to be devastated, to need time away. We're supposed to eulogize beautifully, to reminisce fondly, to keep photo albums close. But what happens when your emotional response to losing a parent is more like relief or nothing at all? What happens when the grief handbook doesn't apply to your experience? For many high achieving Black women, especially, this creates a double burden. Not only are you processing a significant life event, but you're also carrying the weight of feeling like you're grieving wrong, like you failed at the most basic human response. Let me tell you something I learned from Brandie Nichols. There is no wrong way to grieve someone you didn't love. That sentence deserves space to breathe. There is no wrong way to grieve someone you didn't love. When Brandie shared on her Instagram how she navigated the loss of a family member with whom she had a strained relationship, she faced immediate backlash. People questioned her character, her humanity, her very worth as a person. How could you not be devastated? They asked, as if emotional devastation is the only acceptable response to death, as if we must perform grief even when it isn't authentic. But Brandy did something revolutionary. She stood in her truth. Just Start became more than her business affirmation, it became permission to start acknowledging the complexity of family relationships without shame. It became an invitation for others to speak their own complicated truths. And people responded. Women who had spent decades feeling broken because they couldn't manufacture the right feelings about abusive parents. Men who felt relief when toxic family members passed. People who had been carrying the double burden of complex loss and shame about their emotional response to that loss. This isn't just Brandy's story. This is about all of us who have ever felt like emotional outsiders at our own family funerals. I think about Brandy Thompson, who transformed her complicated family history into purpose as community outreach director at Family Support Council. After navigating personal trauma related to domestic violence, a journey made infinitely more complex by difficult family dynamics. She didn't just survive, she channeled that experience into creating support systems for others. When I spoke with her about this work, what struck me was how she described the moment she realized her emotional responses were valid. I spent years thinking I was broken, she told me, because I couldn't manufacture the feelings everyone told me I should have about certain family members. That realization, that validation, became the foundation of her advocacy work. She created spaces where survivors could acknowledge all their feelings, even the uncomfortable ones that don't fit neatly into greeting cards or self help books, even the ones that make people at dinner parties shift uncomfortably in their seats. The truth is, we're having the wrong conversation about grief and family loss. We keep asking, "Are you okay?" when perhaps we should be asking, "What are you actually feeling right now? And how can I support you in that reality?" This matters deeply in our community. For Black women, especially, the expectation to be strong, to hold it together, to forgive family no matter what. These expectations create impossible emotional standards. We're supposed to be the backbone, the emotional center, the ones who keep it all together, even when we're falling apart inside. But what if we're not falling apart? What if instead, we're finally putting ourselves together after years of emotional complexity? Brandie Labama understood this when she founded Labama Beauty. Her company wasn't just about makeup, it was about self definition outside of traditional expectations, including those inherited from family. When customers use her products, they're not just applying makeup, they're reclaiming their right to define beauty on their own terms, often after years of critical parental feedback about their appearance. I created this brand, she told me, because I wanted people to have permission to be exactly who they are, not who their family told them they should be. That's the thread connecting these stories. Permission, permission to feel what you actually feel, not what you're told you should feel. I want to pause here and acknowledge something important. This conversation isn't about villainizing parents or family members who have passed away. It's not about disrespect, it's about honesty. It's about creating space for the full spectrum of human emotion in response to loss. Because here's what happens when we pretend: the emotions don't disappear, they go underground. They transform into anxiety, depression, physical ailments. They emerge in our relationships, our work, our self concept. The cost of emotional dishonesty is too high. I remember sitting with a group of women at a retreat last year. One woman shared that when her emotionally abusive father died, she felt nothing but relief. Then she spent the next decade feeling guilty about that relief. The guilt became depression. The depression became chronic illness, all because she wasn't allowed to say, "This person hurt me, and I am relieved they can no longer hurt me." The room fell silent. Then another woman spoke up, then another. By the end of the evening, half the room had shared similar experiences, all of them carrying the double burden of complex loss and shame about their emotional response to that loss. That's why this conversation matters. That's why Brandie Nichols' willingness to speak openly about her authentic emotional responses matters. It's not just about personal healing, it's about collective liberation from impossible emotional standards. So, what does this mean for you? Maybe you're listening and thinking, "This isn't my experience. I loved my parents deeply and grieved them traditionally." If so, I'm genuinely happy for you. That connection is precious. But maybe you're listening and feeling a weight lifting because someone is finally acknowledging your reality. Maybe you've been carrying the secret that you didn't grieve a parent the way you were supposed to. Maybe you've been wondering if that makes you a bad person. It doesn't. Your emotional responses, all of them, are valid data about your lived experience. They're not moral failings, they're information. When Brandie Nichols faced criticism for her candor about family relationships, she didn't back down. Instead, she built a supportive online community where followers felt empowered to embrace all aspects of their lived experience, including the uncomfortable truths about family dynamics. This is what true emotional freedom looks like, not just embracing softness toward others, but extending that same softness towards yourself. It means dropping the cape of emotional performance and standing in your authentic experience, even when that experience doesn't match societal expectations. For high achieving Black women who have spent years in survival mode, this kind of emotional honesty isn't just healing, it's revolutionary. It's saying, I refuse to perform emotions I don't feel just to make others comfortable. I refuse to carry the additional burden of pretending. That refusal is a form of self love. So here's my challenge to you: stop performing grief, stop performing any emotion that isn't authentic to your experience. The world has enough actors. What we need are truth tellers. Start by giving yourself permission to feel what you actually feel about the people in your life, living or dead. Write it down if you need to. Speak it to a trusted friend. Or simply acknowledge it in the privacy of your own heart. Then extend that same permission to others. When someone shares an unconventional emotional response with you, resist the urge to correct them or tell them how they should feel. Instead, create space for their truth. Say, thank you for trusting me with that. Your feelings are valid. Because here's what I know for certain: when we create space for emotional honesty, we create the conditions for true healing. Not the Instagram version of healing with its perfect quotes and filtered photos. Real healing, messy healing, healing that doesn't follow a timeline or a handbook. And that kind of healing ripples outward. It changes families, it changes communities, it changes how we approach loss and love and everything in between. I want to end with something Brandie Thompson said that stays with me. The day I stopped apologizing for my emotional responses was the day I truly began to heal. Not because my feelings changed, but because I stopped fighting them. There is profound wisdom in that. Healing doesn't always mean feeling what you're supposed to feel. Sometimes healing means accepting what you actually feel. And in that acceptance lies freedom: freedom to grieve or not grieve in your own way, freedom to honor your authentic emotional experience, freedom to put down the script society handed you and write your own. That freedom is your birthright.